July 2nd, 2015. 2-year-old Dior Kunz Jr. was camping with his family at Timber Creek Campground in Idaho. His father turned away for just a moment, maybe 12 seconds. When he looked back, Dior was gone. They searched immediately. The campground wasn't large. There were cliffs nearby, yes, but how far could a toddler get in 12 seconds? The parents called 911 within minutes. Search and rescue arrived within the hour. By the next morning, hundreds of volunteers were combing every inch of that mountain. They never found a single trace of him. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a scent trail for the dogs to follow. It was as if the forest had simply swallowed him whole. Now, you might think this is just a tragic accident. A child wandered off, got lost, succumbed to the elements in a place too vast to search completely. Horrible, but explainable. Except Dior Kunz is just one case. One name in a pattern that spans decades and includes thousands of disappearances. And when you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. This is the missing 411 phenomenon. And once you know what to look for, you'll never look at national parks the same way again. The pattern was discovered by David Paulides, a former police detective who started investigating missing persons cases in national parks. What he found wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. People were vanishing under circumstances that violated everything we know about how people get lost, how searches work, and how bodies are found. Let me tell you about the commonalities, the things that show up again and again and again. First, the victims fit specific profiles, very young children, between 2 and 4 years old, or experienced outdoorsmen, people who know the wilderness, who know how to survive, or highly intelligent people, often with advanced degrees. It's never the obvious tourist who wanders off the trail. It's people who shouldn't vanish. Second, they disappear near water, creeks, rivers, lakes, even small streams. Sometimes they're found near water, miles from where they vanished. The water connection shows up in almost every case. Third, there's a geographic clustering. These disappearances happen in the same places over and over. Yosemite, the Great Smoky Mountains, Crater Lake, the forests of the Pacific Northwest. If you map them, they form hotspots, concentrated areas where the disappearances never stop. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. When search and rescue teams look for these people, the weather turns, always. Clear skies become storms within hours. Fog rolls in from nowhere. Rain washes away tracks. It happens so consistently that some SAR teams have started to dread certain calls because they know what's coming. They know they're about to be fighting against nature itself, and the searches themselves make no sense. Teams will search an area thoroughly, grid by grid, and find nothing. Then days or weeks later, a body appears in that exact area. Not hidden, not buried, just lying there in a place that was already searched multiple times. SAR veterans will tell you this is impossible. You don't miss a body when you're doing a proper grid search. You don't miss it 5 times. But it keeps happening. Then there are the shoes. God, the shoes. When bodies are found, the shoes are missing. Boots, sneakers, hiking shoes, carefully removed. Sometimes the shoes are found later, miles away, placed neatly side by side. Why would someone lost in the wilderness remove their shoes? Why would they walk barefoot through terrain that shreds feet to ribbons? It makes no survival sense, but it's in case after case after case. Some victims are found alive, but what they say is even more disturbing than finding them dead. Children are found miles away from where they vanished, farther than they could possibly walk in the time they were missing. They're found at elevations that would require climbing skills they don't have, in places that adult searchers struggle to reach. And when you ask them what happened, they can't remember. Or they say things that make your blood run cold. A 3-year-old found after 3 days in the wilderness. No injuries, no signs of exposure, even though it had been near freezing at night. They asked him where he'd been. He said a bear took care of him, kept him warm, brought him berries. His parents laughed it off. But he wasn't dehydrated. He wasn't malnourished. Something kept that child alive. Another child, found 2 miles from the search area, told rescuers that the grandma had taken care of her. Both her grandmothers were dead. She described a woman in old-fashioned clothes who gave her berries and told her stories. The child's feet were barely dirty. She hadn't walked 2 miles. Something had carried her. Experienced hikers vanish and are found in places they would never go. A skilled outdoorsman disappears on a trail he's hiked 100 times. His body is found at the top of a mountain in the opposite direction, in an area so remote and steep that investigators couldn't understand how he'd gotten there. No signs of foul play, no explanation. And then there's the silence from the government. The National Park Service doesn't keep a comprehensive list of people who go missing in the parks. They claim it's not their responsibility. When Paulides filed Freedom of Information Act requests, he was stonewalled, given incomplete data, or charged outrageous fees for basic information. It's public land. These are missing persons cases. Why the secrecy? Some parks have disappeared more people than others. Yosemite has had over 700 SAR missions in a single year. The Great Smoky Mountains, the most visited national park, has a disappearance rate that should be national news. But it's not. Most people don't know this is happening. Most people don't know there's a pattern. Let me tell you about a recent case. because this isn't historical. This is happening right now, while you're listening to this. In 2020, Cian McLaughlin vanished in Grand Teton National Park. He was an experienced hiker, 27 years old, fit, knew the area. He went for a run on a trail he'd done before. He never came back. They found his car. They found his phone in the car. They searched for weeks. In 2021, 18 months later, hikers found his body in an area that had been searched multiple times. The area wasn't remote. It wasn't hidden. It was right there. And he'd been there the whole time, supposedly. Or Randy Morganson, a national park ranger who vanished in 1996 in the Sierra Nevada. A ranger, someone who lived in the wilderness, who knew every inch of his territory, gone without a trace. His body was found 5 years later by a hiker, in a place that had been searched exhaustively. He was lying by a creek, the water connection again. There are thousands of these cases, thousands, and the pattern never breaks. Young children, experienced outdoorsmen, water nearby, geographic clusters, impossible search scenarios, missing shoes, weather interference, memory loss, bodies in searched areas. What's taking these people? Where do they go in the minutes or hours before they vanish? Why can't we find them? And why do they appear later in places we've already looked? Some people think it's animal predators, but predators leave traces, blood drag marks, scattered remains. These people vanish cleanly and their bodies show no signs of animal activity. Some people think it's foul play, but how do you explain a toddler found 10 miles away at a higher elevation than where he vanished? How do you explain the same impossibilities across thousands of cases spanning decades? Others whisper about things that don't have names, things that live in the deep forest where cell phones don't work and the trees grow so thick the sun never touches the ground. Things that have always been there, long before we decided to call these places parks and put trails through them. The truth is, we don't know. The government won't study it, the media won't cover it comprehensively, and people keep vanishing. Every year, every season. Right now, as you listen to this, someone is planning a hiking trip to one of these clusters. And maybe they'll come home, or maybe they'll become another pin on the map, another case file that doesn't make sense, another name on a list that nobody wants to admit exists. If you go into the wilderness, stay together. Don't let children out of your sight, not even for a second. Avoid areas near water if you can. And if the weather suddenly changes, if fog rolls in when the forecast was clear, if you feel watched in a forest where nothing moves, get out. Get back to your car and leave, because some places don't want to give you back. And some disappearances aren't mysteries, they're warnings. The forests are still hungry, and they're still taking people.